Rehmann. Empower your purpose.
Welcome, everyone. Thanks for joining us today. I'm Matt Barzak, one of the healthcare business advisors at Rehmann, and I'm super excited to have one of our very own retirement plan specialists with us, Stephen Gibson. Thanks for joining me, Stephen.
Thanks. Pleasure to be here, Matt.
So as we approach 2024, one of the hot topics right now that's coming up a lot are the upcoming changes due to the Secure 2.0 Act. I believe there's somewhere around 90 changes to the retirement plans that go into effect January 1. And this is also in addition to a number of changes that are already in place for 2023. There could be some compliance concerns with that, but I think just as important, there could be a lot of opportunities out there that practice owners are missing the boat on. So with that, Stephen, I'm meeting with a lot of practices, a lot of which are, hey, they might just be starting out. They might not have a retirement plan in place yet. And they're really on the fence. Hey, should I start one right now? Should I wait till next year? What are some of the reasons why now is a great time to look at that?
Sure. Yeah. 92 provisions right in Secure Act 2.0. And there's good, bad, and ugly inside of that. And we'll touch on some of the good aspects, particularly as it relates to starting up a retirement plan. But outside of that, first, the reason why it's great is we're in a super tight labor market, right? These practices and the people that they're looking to bring into the organization, extremely competitive. So any way that you can give yourself an advantage in the workplace, it's going to be very, very helpful, right? And Secure 2.0 made it even more helpful from the standpoint of increasing the startup retirement credits that are available for practices, as well as offering this new employer contribution credit. And what does that credit mean? So generally, like breaking down in this most basic form, $250 per non-highly compensated employee is what you'd get as a credit to offset setting up a retirement plan up to $5,000, right? And that is for a 3-year period. So
I for the administrative piece of it, Stephen, or is that for the actual contribution piece of it? I know there's two components, right?
Yeah, so that's the administrative piece, right? So covers not necessarily investment costs, but on the administrative and on the investment advisory side, it covers that. And so what does a startup quote look like? Yeah, I recently did one for a 20-person practice, and the overall expenses for the administration and on the advisory side came out to be under $5,000. So for that particular case, that organization for the first 3 years would have essentially all of their fees for administration covered.
Free sounds good to me.
Right, and that's part of the hurdles, right? Establishing a retirement plan is the cost and the complexity. So anytime that we can help remove that, the better. The other employer contribution credit. So a lot of these physician groups and these practices, they're designed around maximizing the value for the physicians, right? It's a very key part of all of these retirement plans. And in doing so, there takes a little bit of money that's required to give to everyone else in order for them to maximize their account. For startup plans, there's a $1,000 contribution credit, and it's phased over the first 5 years for practices with under 50 participants. And then it phases out up to 100 participants. So it makes the cost ongoing to maximize the physicians less than what it would be, last year or the year before.
So a portion of that employee contribution, the employee match, is essentially offset due to this credit, right?
Right. So we're thinking about the amount of money that you can put in from the organization. It's going to have a higher allocation towards the physicians at the end of the day.
Which sounds like a win-win in that case for sure. A lot of times too, what we'll see from the tax side of things, right, is maybe we're at the tail end of the year, or worst case scenario, we're preparing a tax return and we have a lot of extra taxable income, and maybe the taxpayer, the client, is in a much greater cash position as well. Didn't they also change when that retirement plan had to be set up by?
Correct. So if you were looking to, defer some of that from a tax purpose, you could set up a plan even in 2024 and be able to make a contribution for 2023. So they become a little bit more lax on that ruling, which is good to see.
So procrastinators prevail one time. So when we start to think about practices that already have a retirement plan in place, right? What are some changes maybe that are already in effect or for future planning purposes that they should be keeping in mind?
Yep. And I'm going to add one on you here. I know we didn't necessarily discuss about it, but now I'm thinking about what we just covered, and it relates back to the cost of the plan. Many times I see organizations running the cost through the plan, these practices, when it's the physicians and the practice owners that have the majority of the assets. So being able to pay those through the organization and getting that additional deduction, like you said, makes for a good point all the way around. For Secure 2.0, we had that. We had Secure 1.0, we had CARES Act. There's been a lot of legislative changes. Right? Now is a great time to work through your entire document to determine if it's set up correctly. From a physician practice owner standpoint, is the employer contribution method set up to optimize and maximize the contribution to those owners, right? Is the eligibility still right? What's the definition of compensation? Plenty of things to go through. Don't just look at Secure 2.0 as here's the couple items we need to address. It's a great time to cover the full thing top down.
That's a good point. I know with the clients that I made the introduction to you on that might not already be with Rehmann, right? I don't think there was any of them that you didn't provide some type of value, and you're meeting with them right off the rip, just kind of as a service of being a Rehmann customer. So appreciate that.
Oh, no problem. Happy to do it. And then there's the other side of the coin is what should we be doing for the organization as it relates to the retirement plan, but for the individual practice owner, right? What are some of the things in Secure 2.0 that we need to look at? And Matt, you and I have talked about it, and you've talked to some of these owners, but what's initially put off as a really good thing of Secure 2.0, right? The delay in the required minimum distributions creates for the unwilling or unknowing practice owner this potential tax situation where you're growing this incredible balance. You might have over $1 million in your retirement plan. You're going to take RMDs, you're 75, and you're finding out that those RMDs are going to be rather large, right? And from a tax perspective, really costing you. So some of the things we've been talking about is doing those Roth contributions between when you leave work and when you start those RMDs. Have you been talking about that with your clients, Matt?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, deferring those RMDs, like you said, it is a good thing. It allows the taxpayer to have more freedom, right? But it also is an additional deferral, that growing balance, and potentially a tax hit. So the moral of the story, utilize that gap between, hey, I'm retired, I no longer have a W-2 or the practice income, between that retirement date and the date that you're required to take your distribution from your IRA. So that gap, let's say it's 5 years between those two dates, for example, that gap of 5 years, your income, you can control what your taxable income is. If your taxable income is super low, hey, maybe we can even recognize capital gains at a 15% or sometimes even a 0% rate. Free capital gains, that's a win. And also those Roth conversions. So like you said, converting that deferred account into Roth in smaller increments can be a win-win as well.
Right. And many practice owners aren't aware that there exists a provision inside of retirement plans that they elect it to do those Roth conversions inside of the 401k plan and not require it to go through an outside IRA, that typical conversion aspect. And that goes back to the look at your entire plan design. Is it set up right?
That's a great point as well. Another thing that pops into my mind in this primarily relates to beneficiaries of retirement accounts, how they adjusted the rule, how you used to be able to take that over a longer period of time, and they've changed it so that we're required to distribute it out in a smaller window. Can you touch on that at all, Stephen?
Right, yes. And again, so you're thinking, okay, 75 is going to be the RMD age. And if you pass away after the first couple of years, it goes on to spouse or kids primarily. What ends up occurring is now, so if it goes to the kids, right, they might be in their 40s or 50s in the highest earning income years of their life. And now they're required to take out this distribution over a 10-year period. And so the tax hit from them is going to be pretty large as well. It might even be larger than if the RMD itself had been taken out by the owner.
Right. So more or less something to be mindful of, that there's this additional burden of this needs to be distributed out over 10 years. You don't really have an option of stringing it out even further.
Yep.
Is there anything else from a retirement plan perspective you wanted to cover today, Stephen? I know there's a lot that's changed within this. This really only scratches the surface, right?
Right. And I would say if you have not looked at your specific design in the past couple of years, you need to take a look at it, and specifically focusing around that employer contribution aspect. You know, we've helped clients go from having 60% of the employer contribution go to the practice owner, and then, 40% going to everyone else. Same allocation, same dollar amount, but instead we can switch it up to potentially have 80 or 85% go towards the practice owner with a lower requirement to everyone else. So if that has not been looked at, that would be something that everyone would want to do here pretty soon.
And with that too, each practice has a different employee makeup as far as the demographics. So each retirement plan should be looked at with a different lens, right?
Correct. Yes, definitely 100%.
Well, thanks for joining me today, Stephen. I think the moral of the story is, especially since we've only touched on a few of these items, is for everyone on this call to reach out to one of your Rehmann advisors. If you're not already with one of us, be proactive and pick up the phone today and give us a ring. But
Yep.
Thanks for joining us.
Thank you.